Enjoy the magic of Christmas Day on 1. At 6, Jack Nicholson is feeling a little peaky.
I have given a name to my pain. And it is Batman.
The caped crusader of Gotham City makes the Joker's life a misery. And Eddie Murphy forsakes his own royal lifestyle at 9:30 in favor of coming to America. In search of a bride.
I am a man who has never tied his own shoes before.
Wrong. You are a prince who has never tied his shoes. Believe me, I tied my own shoes once. It is an overrated experience.
Jokers all the way, Christmas Day on BBC One.
Over on BBC Two, in about 5 minutes, Whoopi Goldberg stars in Steven Spielberg's remarkable and powerful The Colour Purple, a story of brutal male oppression, female servitude, and one woman's spirited fight to discover her own worth. Here on BBC One, after the news in a moment, we've an extra programme in which Terry Waite talks to Michael Burke in his first television interview since his release about his kidnap and captivity. That means that programmes for the rest of the evening will move on by half an hour, with You Rang My Lord at 10 o'clock, Everyman at 10:50, and highlights of the final day's play in the World Golf Championship from Jamaica at 11:40. So, now on BBC One at 9:15, the news with Chris Lowe.
Terry Waite says he knew nothing about any dealings involving arms for hostages. In his first television interview, he gives a graphic account of his years as a captive, and he shows the blindfold he was forced to wear for so long. More terrorist murders in Northern Ireland. That's 5 tit-for-tat killings in 24 hours. Good evening. Terry Waite has said he played no part whatsoever in the arms for hostages dealings of Colonel Oliver North. In an exclusive BBC interview, which you can see in full after this news, he's described in detail for the first time his 5 years in captivity in Lebanon, how he was tortured, beaten and subjected to a mock execution. He told Michael Burke he had to go back to Beirut because he was told the hostages were seriously ill. But in trying to negotiate for their freedom, he became a hostage himself.
Terry Waite has been back at his home in Blackheath this weekend, a month after his release from captivity in Lebanon. Time now, he decided, to tell the full story of his captivity, of the dealings and double crosses that led the hostage negotiator to become a hostage himself.
I was put in the back of a van and taken and driven into a garage, got out of the van, and there was a trapdoor in the floor. They lifted it up, told me to step down. I stepped on top of a wardrobe and then had to jump down. And it was an underground prison, of which there are many in the Middle East and many, many in Lebanon. And a huge iron door with a grill in it. They opened this door and pushed me inside, and it was a tiled cell. And I sat down and I knew that was it.
At first, they thought he was an American spy. They subjected him to a mock execution and regular torture.
They beat me with cable on the soles of my feet, which is very painful. I don't recommend it. They subjected me to a mock execution. One day, the guard came into the room and he said, "You have 5 hours to live." And that was that.
While he'd been negotiating, Colonel Oliver North in the White House was buying hostages' freedom with arms, the Iran Gate scandal. Terry Waite denies being part of it, but admits now that he was used.
I have never, ever condoned the policy of paying ransom for hostages, be that in terms of money or in terms of arms. And had I the slightest knowledge of that, I would have had to pull out immediately.
He says he's fit and well and planning to campaign against injustice worldwide. But scars, mental and physical, remain.
This blindfold was the one that I wore for years. I had to wear this, well, let's say, I had to put that on every time someone came in the room. It is the one, I mean, I shouldn't have it really. It just happened to be in my pocket when I was released and I came away with it. Normally it would be kept behind. And that is the old chipped. You know, I can hardly look at these things without. I put them at work.
Terry Waite. In a further round of violence in Northern Ireland, a Catholic man has been killed in a bar in southwest Belfast and 3 other people were wounded. One of them was an 8-year-old boy who's in a critical condition in hospital. The illegal loyalist group, the Ulster Freedom Fighters, said that it carried out that attack, which followed yesterday's shootings in which 4 men were murdered within 12 hours.
In Northern Ireland this Christmas, murder is begetting murder. 1 man was shot dead and an 8-year-old boy critically injured in a revenge attack by sectarian gunmen in this pub. The boy was playing snooker with his father at the time. One man who was there described what happened, but he wouldn't appear on camera.
They just came in, run round the snooker tables. They were shooting anybody that was playing snooker. They went up, they shot the young lad at 10 years of age, and that was it. If you moved, you were shot.
2 other men were injured. Both underwent surgery. One's described as ill, the other as comfortable. This kind of attack underlines that gunmen who are determined to murder will do so despite a heightened level of security. The paramilitaries on both sides have now shot children. That underlines that in this present cycle of violence, they don't care who gets in their line of fire. The Sinn Féin president, Gerry Adams, was at the scene this afternoon. Under the government's restrictions, we can't broadcast any sound, but we can report that while he said he believed there was a right to armed struggle, there was no place for nakedly sectarian murder, including, by implication, IRA attacks which have been condemned as such. The illegal loyalist terror group, the Ulster Freedom Fighters, said they'd carried out the shooting in retaliation for recent attacks by the IRA and a Republican splinter group, the IPLO, who appear to be behind a similar piece of random brutality at a pub in an overwhelmingly Protestant area last night. 55-year-old Thomas Gorman and Barry Watson, aged 25, were killed when a gunman sprayed the customers with gunfire. Within hours, a Catholic, 28-year-old William Johnston, was shot dead in the house nearby where he lived with his Protestant girlfriend. The UFF, again, said it was in direct response to the shooting at the Donegal Arms.
The bulk of people in Northern Ireland want to live at peace with one another. There's an element who are out to try to enforce their views upon a majority. Whether that majority be Roman Catholic or Protestant, they will not give in to them.
94 people have now died in Northern Ireland's troubles in 1991, the bloodiest 12-month period for 9 years.
Mikhail Gorbachev has still to announce when he'll step down as president of what was the Soviet Union. His job was abolished yesterday by leaders of the 11 former Soviet republics who agreed to set up the new Commonwealth of Independent States.
The presidential plane, which arrived back from Alma-Ata, bore the name Russia for the first time. The words Soviet Union have been painted out. And the Russian president, having taken over the functions of the old Soviet leadership, regards the new system with satisfaction. The most important point, he said, was that the republics would be independent. There was no center and no diktat, by which he meant the republics won't have to do what Moscow says, and they'll be independent economically. But although the old president has been forced aside by the new one, Mr. Gorbachev still isn't saying exactly when he'll go. As soon as I receive the official documents from Alma-Ata, he says, and see that the Commonwealth is a reality, then I'll take my decision in a few days. He also said a little despairingly, we have wasted so much time. Yet there are still some people here who hanker for the old leaders and the old ways. Live, live, they're chanting. These are unreconstructed communists demanding live broadcasts on the television service which once carried nothing but the communist line. The worse things get, the better even communism seems. Plenty of people would gladly give up democracy if things only worked better. John Simpson, BBC News, Moscow.
A ceasefire between government and rebel troops in the former Soviet Republic of Georgia appears to have failed. Fighting is continuing outside President Gamsakurdiyev's headquarters in the Georgian capital Tbilisi. It's not clear if the president has left the building. The rebels are angry at his refusal to allow Georgia to join the new Commonwealth of Independent States.
It was early this morning that opponents of President Zviad Gamsakhurdia launched their attack on his headquarters.
And more weapons. There's a grim determination that Osijek won't be battered into submission like the neighbouring city of Vukovar.
Almost the same number as last year. The Association of Chief Police Officers blames selfish, hardcore drink drivers.
This year's crackdown on drinking and driving is the toughest so far. Throughout the country, police are breath testing every driver involved in accidents and anyone stopped even for the most minor offences. So the arrest of more than 1,700 drunk drivers since last Tuesday has disappointed the Association of Chief Police Officers.
We've got to a hard core of drivers that are just not going to take the advice. What the police should have is powers to breathalyse, irrespective of whether or not the police officer suspects that the driver has consumed alcohol. And in that way, not catch more people, but deter people from drinking and driving.
The hardcore of persistent drink drivers had been targeted in the government's hard-hitting new TV commercial, which makes the viewer the offender facing retribution.
I regret to inform you that the girl is dead.
But today's figures suggest that message still isn't getting through. Police say drunk drivers arrested at Christmas could face a long wait in the cells, and they may find themselves bailed only on condition that they don't drive again until they're brought to court.
Trade in smaller shops has fallen by 30% in the month since some supermarkets opened on Sundays. The Keep Sunday Special campaign say the decision by big stores to stay open beyond the new year means many smaller ones will have to close.
Opening for business and breaking the law. Nearly all the 230 stores at Britain's biggest shopping and trade centre in Essex. Retailers across the country were again ignoring the ban, hoping to turn around what's otherwise been a desperate year. From the shoppers, predictable enthusiasm.
We're both completely tied up like the next 2 days. So today's the day when really you get the chance to do whatever and get your shopping done.
Some chains like Marks & Spencer and the Burton Group remained closed, saying they would wait until the law was clarified by the European courts. Tesco, Sainsbury and Asda, however, again promised to continue Sunday opening into next year.
It's an appallingly irresponsible decision which will undoubtedly cost jobs, it will ruin the peace and quiet of neighbourhoods, it will put more shop workers and their families under great duress, and it will also drive thousands of small shops to the wall.
With the trading laws in tatters, government and councils reluctant to intervene, Sunday opening is fast becoming part of normal high street business.
And that's all from the newsroom for tonight. Good night.
Good evening to you. Let me start with a sneak preview of Christmas Day, and that really means, I think, wet and windy in the north and probably staying dry in the south after a frosty start. It's going to be wet and windy in many parts of the country tonight and tomorrow, thanks to that little area of low pressure that's going to deepen like mad as it moves across to the north of us. Rain already coming into western Scotland, and it's going to be fairly wet and windy there for much of the night. But by the end of the night, somewhat clearer weather will have got into many central and northern parts, the rain by then into southern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland into the north of England and Wales. And as that clearer weather comes along, it'll bring with it some blustery showers, and the temperature will be dropping off at the same time. But a very, very mild night to come in those southern areas. Now there's the front that's going to cause all the rain tomorrow. It's going to march on quite steadily southwards during the course of the day. So rain in the morning in the more northern parts of England and Wales, moving down in the afternoon into southern areas, whereas that brighter weather follows along behind. And I think by the end of the afternoon, by tea time, we'll see the back of that rain as it moves away from the tip of Kent. And then everybody into breezy weather, very strong winds actually in the north and the west, and a fair number of showers, and those showers turning out to be quite heavy and wintry in the north and west of Scotland. It will be turning colder tomorrow, noticeably so in those northern areas, but for much of the day I think it is going to be pretty mild again in the south. That's all. Have a very good evening to you.
Christmas film drama on One with Dustin Hoffman's compelling portrayal of autism.
There are dangers everywhere for Raymond. Routines, rituals, it's all he has to protect himself.
Of course, it's definitely not my room, and I don't have my tapioca pudding, and the bed's in the wrong place. That's definitely not my bed.
You don't like it there, you can move it.
Why do you want the bed, Raymond? Should be near the window.
Raymond was left all the money, and I got nothing.
How much?
$3 million, the inheritance, every penny of it.
So?
So I'm going to keep him till I get my half. I deserve that.
Dustin Hoffman and Tom Cruise star in Rain Man tomorrow at 9:35 on BBC One.
Now on BBC One, a special programme. In his first television interview since his release, former hostage Terry Waite talks to Michael Burke.
It's a month now since Terry Waite stepped out of an RAF plane into a gale at Lynham, free after nearly 5 years held hostage in Lebanon. He said then he wanted to answer the questions that remain about his role in the hostage crisis. Until now, he's only hinted at how he suffered. Can you remember how you spent last Christmas?
I can remember it very well indeed. It was my first Christmas for some years in company, because I'd been moved in with John McCarthy, a fine companion, Terry Anderson and Tom Sutherland. And I, in fact, was pretty ill. I'd had a bronchial complaint, and I really did not feel well at all. And in captivity, we were never allowed a pencil and paper at all, but we asked for one on Christmas Day. And the guard came in and stood over Terry Anderson as he got the side of a cardboard box and made a game of Scrabble. And the guard stood there while Terry was writing out the letters and making the Scrabble board. And on Christmas afternoon, we played Scrabble. Good Christmas Day. And then we switched on the radio. And this is about the first time I'd had a radio, because in solitary, apart from just a few weeks, I had no radio. And got the Queen's Christmas message. And the Queen, in her Christmas message, mentioned hostages and asked that they be remembered. And I can't tell you how much that meant.
Can I take you further back to January 1987? When was the moment at which you ceased to be a hostage negotiator and became, in fact, a hostage yourself?
I think I went to meet the captors at the flat of a medical doctor in Beirut, where I'd met them before. And I was sitting in the room, and he received a telephone call. And he told me that he had to go to an emergency at the hospital. I stayed alone in this apartment. I heard the lift coming up, and my contact came into the room, the person with whom I'd been negotiating. I went down with him, down in the lift, into the deserted street outside. It was raining. It was dark. We got into the car and drove off into the night. I was taken. We went to an apartment in southern Lebanon, and I then was subject to a total change of clothes and close examination in order to see if I was carrying anything that might have been able to indicate where I was located.
That's a very detailed physical examination.
Absolutely.
How detailed?
Well, probe any scars on your body, look at your head, examine your teeth. I mean, had there been anything, of course. I mean, one would have been killed on the spot. No question about that. And then I was told to wait. Now, at this point, there was still a chance